I think in the beginning of any company, the CEO is not defined as chief executive officer. It is just chief experimentation officer because you come up with an idea, a little bit innovation, a little bit invention, your passion. You are one of the first employees of the company.
So, hello, everyone. My name is Kathleen Randall. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Go to Market Lab, which is a podcast that we created in order to bring founders, revenue leaders together so that we can start to guide them through their go to market strategies through those different pivots and stages of their company. Especially because the subject of go to market, I personally feel like is a little bit misunderstood. Go to market, not equal to sales. And so we feel like one of the things we can do as a service to our tech community is just be able to share some of those stories, those war wounds that you wouldn't know unless you've been through it a few times. And so hence the art and the science of being able to execute go to market. So up until this date in our episodes, we have unpacked from a Backstreet's driver perspective, what is an ICP? What is a great demo, et cetera. But we haven't heard from somebody who's been in the hot seat, i.e. a CEO, a multi-time founder around those same questions and how a founder might look at those same problems. We've been talking about it from a strategic and a tactical perspective in terms of being able to help from a product marketing view, from a sales view, from a revenue leader view. So we're going to switch the perspective today and cover some of those same topics and get another sense, another opinion as to how that plays out whenever it's you, yourself, and I at that lonely top that we call CEO. So I'm very excited and joining us today. I have Kursat Hosel. I'm so excited that he's here. And the reason why is that he's got a wealth of experience. So he's what I would say the definition of a serial entrepreneur. He started companies in Europe and Asia and North America. He's been a founder and a CEO not once, twice, but 4 times. His portfolio includes both B2B and B2C companies, which is a little bit rare in the space. Usually you have a kind of an expertise. His most recent exit was a data analytics company, Jinghu Software from Shanghai, China. And since the beginning of 2024, he's been working on bootstrapping yet a new company called Constellation, which is an AI-driven data quality platform for enterprises. So needless to say, despite the fact that he's been obviously very busy in launching companies, starting them and executing them, he also is very much an academic. So he was a guest lecturer at the University School of Management, the Haas Business School at UC Berkeley between 2015 and 2023. And so as he was doing those roles, really the remit was teaching MBAs who were about to go into the market, things like market intelligence, entrepreneurship, corporate strategy, product management, digital transformation. He's also then been on the corporate side. So he has spent time at Disney streaming data product management organization. And that was primarily around helping with Disney Plus and Hulu data. So he's got all different aspects here to pull from. So without further ado, it's great to see you. I'm excited to get into the conversation. Welcome to the Go to Market Lab and thanks for being here.
Great to be here, Caitlin. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kind of first start off this segment with talking about what CEO's role in go-to-market strategy. We've talked about this in our last conversation. I'm a big advocate that go-to-market is not a single responsibility. Hence, there is not a VP of go-to-market in most companies. I feel very firmly that go-to-market is a combination of your executive leadership team, of product, of marketing and sales, and really those teams coming together and collaborating to come up with these strategies and consequently execute their parts in the contribution of making those strategies work. But as you think about this from a CEO's perspective, let's kind of start from foundation up for go-to-market. When you are launching a new company, and you're thinking around what is the market that we're focused on and what is the ICP or ideal customer profile as you kind of go down that journey, and how do you start to think about it from the get-go?
Yeah, that's a great start. I think in the beginning of any company, the CEO is not defined as chief executive officer. It is just chief experimentation officer because you come up with an idea. You say, okay, I have an idea. I'm going to work on it. Let's see if it's going to work or not.
Yeah.
And the idea is a combination of the product market fit, right? So before trying to understand what is my go-to-market strategy, you have to decide on what the product is. So it is all roots in a little bit innovation, a little bit invention, your passion as you are one of the first employees of the company, if not the first one, along with your co-founders. So
Right.
you're supposed to think about, well, what is my target segment here based on the product I am willing to build. But maybe at the end of the day, you are not going to end up with the same product you dream of. So you go through a lot of design thinking, a lot of market research, a lot of customer interviews process. So as I said, it is not a CEO job as
Yeah.
per se, but yeah, that's a lot of design thinking and a lot of customer interviews it takes.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you asked that. I've been on the startup side, but I've also been on the big box side where you've got teams that do market research. So talk to me about when you're kind of doing quote unquote market research. You mentioned one of them, just customer interviews. I'm assuming maybe that's kind of reaching out to your network, but what is kind
Yeah.
of your thought at that stage of, I'm sure the goal is not to spend $20,000 and launch a very tense market study. So how do you think about market research at these early stages? Like what,
Yeah.
and how do you start to think about, okay, this is good enough? Like I'm hearing enough where I'm ready to commit. I don't have to have, 10 more data points. What's your throttle point and how do you go about that? And again, let's just assume at this stage, you're probably bootstrapped, right? From a cash
Yeah.
and resource
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah. I don't think you have huge budgets in order to validate something. So one rule I continue to talk about is get out of the building. So it is easy to reach out to people around you, like friends, family, or colleagues. Usually these people are, you already know, you already have an idea how are they going to respond, and they don't want to break your heart with some giving negative responses to your research. They don't want to disencourage you. So going and talking with strangers is very important, but I think the art there is how you run the customer interview. Still, it is one of the biggest pitfalls when you're running a customer interview. Really try to understand, really try to listen the other person.
Hmm.
It is not about you go and validate what you think. I see it a lot in the beginning of my career. Also, I did that mistake a lot, and many people come and interview me, and I see they are asking the wrong question. I go along with it. I just say whatever they want to hear because the question begs for it. And of course, I give my feedback. Here is how you do it. There are academic part of it as well. But I think like not asking yes, no questions, like trapping the interviewee is very important. Try to understand how they feel. What is the customer journey? And we are talking about two type of customer journey. One is what is the purchase of the product when it comes to customer's journey. And the other one is how do you use the product after purchase? What kind of pain points they are solving. So try to understand this is not about validating what you think, but more about discovering what you don't know. So discovering what you don't know is very, very interesting case. It's because it's an unknown to you. So you don't know what to ask. So it is not about asking questions. It is about extracting the information during the interview. And I think when you combine this with getting out of the building rule, you go and talk. If you think they're relevant, that's cool. But I wouldn't skip anyone when it comes to the early stage companies. So being open minded, being brave to talk with the strangers, and it doesn't take too much, and executing the art of customer interview are the key points. And you don't need any money to do any of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said again as a recovering salesperson, one of the things that we kind of say sometimes when we're training a new salesperson, say record the meeting. And if you talked more than 10-15% of the time, you probably had a bad meeting. So to
That's
your point, just very simple techniques. We use this in value selling. That is, somebody says something, you say, tell me more. I'm not sure I understand. Can you unpack that in more detail? And to your point, I think having those conversations with not your friends and family, those who are not taking the meeting because they like you, but those who are taking the meeting because you say, hey, I believe that I'm solving for this need. And they say, hey, I have that need. Let's talk. But to your point, you're able to really ask questions around how do they think and rather than asking lead the witness questions that are going to take them down your path. And I might add to that that, a big fan of blue ocean strategy is one of the also things to think about is you want people who actually are using the competitive product or a substitute product because you want to understand what's drawing them to those solutions. Because if you don't have a better answer for what is attractive to that, why would they switch? So I think that to me is one of the things that I've also seen. I wonder if you agree that, if you're able to get to someone who is using an alternative to what you're
Yeah.
gonna offer, that's as good as gold.
Yeah, definitely. I think finding the companies that are already using your competitor's product is one thing, but replacing a competitor is really hard because of the sales cycle, because of it depends on what kind of segment you are targeting. If it is
Of
like
course.
a corporate business, definitely it is going to be much harder to replace. But I think to your point, the companies who has the companies who have used the product and they still feel the pain and they are really trying to solve the problem. They do understand the problem and they're willing to take any solutions that is going to ease the pain are the easiest segments to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Ideally, you're in an ocean that's blue and not a red ocean that's bleeding or having to ward off competitors left and right. But again, to
Yeah.
your point, it depends on the product and the market you're going after, whether you're an early adopter market or a very well-baked market. So let's kind of keep going down kind of this methodological journey. So let's say you started the company, you really now have your thesis as to what the ideal customer profile is, the target market segment. And so now you need to go sell. Now you're getting meetings and you're trying to sell first version of the product. CEO and founders are the first salespeople. So I'd love
Yeah.
to get your take on what it's like in terms of
Yeah.
being a first salesperson and what are kind of the tactics that you use as a founder selling? And most importantly, you not only are the salesperson, you're also all the other roles of the company. So how do you think about that balance in
Yeah.
terms of able to be your company spokesperson while still getting, making sure you have time to think strategically around, what you have to accomplish for the company as a whole?
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of sales actually as a CEO, but eventually nobody knows the product better than you do. So you are the best salesperson in early stage company. I think that the role of the chief executive officer has only one job, selling the company. So selling the company and selling the product are total different games. But until you build the company, you create the value for your investor, for your stakeholders, and in early stages, most of the time it's yourself and your co-founders. You have to move the ball forward, of course, by selling the product. But I think recruiting the correct person to do that business for you is much more crucial than selling the product if you want to build a scalable business. And in order to do that, who are you going to recruit? Who are you going to hire? You don't know what the product is in early stage. You don't know what the market is. You don't have a sales playbook. You don't have a proper training implanted in the company yet. So eventually you will have to do that. I think it is also fun. I'm not a big fan of it because you also have like lots of legal things, the recruitment, product roadmap, and the strategy, all kind of things happening. And sometimes sales doesn't happen just because of you are not there. It is because of the flexibility is not there. And the biggest advantage of the CEO in sales meeting is you can make very quick decisions in the meeting because it is your baby, it is your product, it is the market.
Right.
You want to switch, you want to stay, whichever the decision you want to make. As long as the vision and mission is set, I think the flexibility is the maximum there.
Mhm.
And this is the biggest advantage as a founder CEO brings to the table because you go listen to customer and they are talking about something very interesting. But if you are not authorized to respond this demand, then you are going to lose the opportunity. And the CEO comes with that big wild card. So uh, that's pretty much it. I think just like a customer interview, you don't execute the sales plan, but an early stage, you again, like try to understand the problem, try to design a solution on the spot and shape a new product and market fit.
Right, exactly. Because I I mean, I'm guessing at that point, perhaps another silver lining of being in the sales meetings is you're able to get live input real time as to, is this resonating? When we show the demo, what do they perk up their head of? What do they, kind of furrow the bars of their eyebrows and they don't really understand, and so probably helps you to get kind of that full feedback too as well. But let's just say at this stage, you have a small team. I think there's a hot topic. A lot of the clients, Kursat, that I work with are technical founders. So unlike you, they don't have they were a professor in marketing. So this is not their jam. They
Yeah. Yeah.
obviously they're great salespeople. Why? Because they are passionate about the product, passionate about the solving that problem, but they maybe don't know, how do you actually run a sales cycle? How do you close a deal? How do you do, negotiation? There's the art of that too as well. So how do you think about, kind of your initial team, maybe your initial hires as you're starting to at least add, a person or two to help with the selling aspect? How do you think about, and let's say a marketer, a head of marketing or product marketer that's going to help you with asset creation, fine tuning the go to market messaging, so to speak. What is your strategy on kind of when you're, how you're going to actually scale that team and scale it at this stage, right? Let's just assume you've got one, maybe two hires, if that. And what are you looking for as to people that will complement you at this kind of early stage of the journey?
Especially in early stage, I can just throw a number there. First 50, 60 people, I think should come with the founder mentality. This is my company. This is what I do for a living. And I'm going to create some value rather than losing yourself in the red tape and bureaucracy. I think bringing in that kind of people is very important. And when it comes to sales, like you mentioned, the passion, the talent is very important. Sales is an art, and you can definitely master it by studying, by practicing. But some people are really gifted and they really enjoy what they are doing, and when they become really good at it. I would be blessed if I have some couple of salespeople in the team with that passion. But it is very important those people also have the product understanding. Because as I said, the flexibility in the meetings, being authorized, being able to be capable of changing the roadmap, even changing the positioning based on just one single opportunity is a power, and not everybody come with that power. The organization's culture makes a huge impact here. The leadership is very important here. But I think it goes back again when we talk about the early stage startup. It's again like understanding the market, running the market research every moment, every single moment. So I remember one incident actually. It was like early in my career and in my academic career. I was offering market intelligence class, and it was my first time offering market intelligence to higher education. And many students came hoping that they are signing up for the marketing class. So because it was my fault, I couldn't communicate the curriculum well, and the market intelligence and marketing got confused. So we were running the market research practices there, and it is so easy to mix them. They are so close, but they are totally different disciplines. In market research, you continuously try to understand what is my assumption I am making here? What
Mhm.
is the possibility here in the market? Where is my positioning is going to happen? And you make this decision continuously. And on the marketing, it is more about articulating the value, creating the channels and delivering the message, make sure that the customer is receiving whatever they are demanding for in the most appropriate way. So they're very close, but there's a fine line between them. A salesperson who is bringing founder mentality, marketing skills, and being very articulate about what the value is, which is very hard in the early stage, and having the mindset of I am in the middle of the market research right now. If you can bring these three, you have a great team you're already building.
Yeah, and to your point, that's a story for the day. That's a bit of a unicorn. That's probably why I have clients too as well. And that, a true salesperson who's really good at their game, they enjoy closing deals and making money. But what you described may not result right in making money or closing deals immediately. What that results in is really more almost like a product marketing mentality of really understanding, okay, what is going to work? And so to your point, I think I've had long conversations and coached founders on how are you going to interview for the right person? Because, sales is also a discipline that there's different types of sellers. And if you're looking for more strategic, that may not be a salesperson you're looking for. That might be a good product marketer who is
Yeah.
good in terms of articulating, and maybe that's your first in. Maybe you complement that with a junior salesperson who's going to do the tactical stuff of booking the meetings and moving the deals forward and making sure you'd follow ups and proposals and all those things. Or a sales engineer, I think is also one of the other roles that I love as one of the first in because they'll understand the product. But again, if you have a good sales engineer, they understand the value, not just the button clicks, right?
I think it is also related to what stage your company is. If you're in growth stage, you have to close the deal. You have to generate, and probably the revenue is one of the biggest metrics in your
Right.
success. But
That's right.
if you are looking at the very early stage, you're bootstrapping a company and you're still looking for where to pivot. The startup is a pivoting game eventually. Where to pivot, and you are really looking for the global max instead of the local max, then you have to be a little bit more patient and focus on what is the most correct thing to do right now at this moment. And instead of closing the deal, you can also try to balance, okay, I'm going to generate some money here, some revenue here, but also how am I going to take the product to the next step? This is also very important for an early stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder, we didn't talk about this before, but I wonder how you think about design partners in those early stages, customer design partners who, you're bringing in, they may not be exchanging revenue, but they're perhaps maybe partnering with you. Do you ever just curious if you take that route with any of your startups? You're at the stage where your product is kind of, let's say, beta stage, right? Not, you're still kind of wrapping up the bells and whistles. And, typically it's a noted brand. So you want to bring them on. They're saying, hey, I'm going to commit the time and resources because I have this problem. I believe in this product, and hopefully, obviously, you get to the point where you've got a handshake understanding that at some point they will provide you with money, but you are getting kind of that hands on technical feedback. So sometimes I find one of the first sales that you do are things that is an exchange like that. So maybe it's a nominal cost that feels like a paid POC, but you are getting kind of that feedback. Just kind of curious if that's a
Yeah,
strategy that
yeah,
you pass and what's your thoughts about that.
yeah, that's right. And I think it depends on the business model. Like if you're doing B2B, definitely it would be great to have kind of
Yeah.
partners because when you're trying to sell a corporate, you don't have enough resources to support that client. Usually they are bigger companies than you are. The enterprise software, just like Constellation in today. And instead of setting everything on contract base, here is the product, here is the customer, here is the contract, and we are going to execute this. We are going to sell the contract and then we are going to execute based on that. A little bit flexibility. What you're offering is, okay, I'm going to change my roadmap for you and you are going to support me with your feedback. I think it's a great win-win situation. And in order to do that, I think one of the go-to-market strategies here is just reaching out, whoever is willing to give that feedback to you. And it is going to be for free, or maybe you are going to give some premium models and some pilots, point of concepts, and then you can discover more from the market because there are lots of unknowns to you.
Yeah.
And those customers' insight is going to be very valuable.
Yeah, that's helpful. Appreciate your thoughts on that. Okay, let's move on to thinking about the point of the company. Again, may depend on the company and the revenue structure, but where you need a scale. The founder can't be in all the deals. You need to
Yeah.
start to move that to a sales team. You need to move the marketing asset creation to a marketing leader, product marketing, et cetera. In your opinion, what is that point that first, let's call it team, right? 5, 6 people need to be hired. But I ask this question because candidly, I've seen both scenarios play out where you hire that team too early before you've
Mhm.
got consistency in your go to market strategy or messaging. And it's just a bad situation. Nobody's selling anything. Everybody's unhappy. It kind of just makes for tough. And, under P&L, you've got this huge expense that's not producing. But then there's also another stake where at some point, are you throttling your growth because you're the bottleneck now? And, in transitioning what is such a beautiful CEO pitch because it's viscerally in your bones to a person who is not that person, sometimes is a little bit difficult to try to get that same message and put it in a box, right? For replicating. So for you, what are your kind of at your startups? What has been kind of, for lack of better words, the symptoms or the criteria that you start to pick up on and say, yeah, we're ready now. We're ready. This is because these things are happening. I feel that this
Yeah.
is the right time to start building, team A.
Yeah. I think there's a trade-off. It depends on what the definition of success is. Um, Salespeople are not only people who close the deal, they just bring the money and that's it. And it is actually your API or your interface to the world. They set the personal relationship. They really understand not only related to your product part in their company, but everything else in the customer's company. They really understand what they're doing. So if you're trying to build a successful long-term partnership type of relationship with the customer, which is, I believe it's an essential, in my opinion, for B2B companies, B2B businesses, you will need salespeople. And you are going to set this up as early as possible. That will be great. But the trade-off is the startup mission, vision, the product, the value proposition, the differentiation might change. It can change every week. So finding the correct person, you're going to say, okay, I found the correct person and here is the pitch. Here is our pricing strategy and let's go and execute. And next week, everything is changing. What are you going to do? You are going to train again. You are going to brainstorm again. This is lots of time and resources waste. But if you are trying to leverage that incoming information and changing the roadmap according to that information, definitely having the salespeople is going to help. The salespeople that have the talent, like we described before. As the transition from CEO to sales team, I think it is more about like a partnership, a little bit like brain and the muscle work. You have to automate something, right? And if you try to automate things before you are ready, probably the automation is going to cause some waste. But
Okay.
if you can hire a salesperson who is also bringing some brainstorming, soundboarding part of it, and then they're going to help you to grow the team, and you let them to grow their own team. So my four of my companies, it has been the same way. I never hired like four salespeople at the same time. I hired one single salesperson and let them to build their own sales department. So
Yeah.
it also aligned with the delegation requirement of the management.
Yeah. Hassan, how do you, so one of the thing that I'm doing in my consulting practice and spending a lot of time and thinking about how we are able to do sales execution better. And one thing I do have a strong belief on is leveraging tools for conversational intelligence and being able to capture that information. Because I find sometimes what I even experience as a leader is, once you start scaling up a team and having hires, so you as a founder or head of sales, you can't be in every room and every time. So you lose a bit of that insight, that you had whenever you were in the meetings, which is obviously gold at those early stages. So how have you found the ability to keep, for lack of better words, your pulse and visibility on what's working and what's not? Because I think one of the plights that I've also run into is, yay, we got leads in, we're working the deals, but for some reason, man, they're not closing. And, we're desperately trying to figure out what is not working in the process. And it's hard to be. And again, you have six salespeople. Like, what is not working here? Is the pricing, et cetera. And again, you can't have every six of those salespeople can't be your alpha, right? They can't be that same file who you hired. So what have you used at your startups in terms of being able, once you have a team and you and or your revenue leader, you've got, employees, how do you keep a pulse on, if you will, the day to day in order to keep those, to your point, drive those pivots, know when you need to start pivoting the sales playbook or the go to market playbook?
Yeah, it's aligns with the entire startup game, I think you should be focusing on what is working instead of what is not working, because millions of things are not going to work, and there are only a couple of options that are going to work. So
Yeah.
if you have a team of 5, 6 people and most of the things are not working, you try to identify when it works, what does it work? What is the root cause of it? What is the real reason that is working? And if you can identify that, the rest of it is the team building, collaboration, and making the information transfer. Let's try to imitate this. Is really, we are talking about the same targeted segment. Maybe 5 salespeople think that they are attacking the same segment, but maybe one of them is a little bit different that we haven't figured out.
Mhm.
And she keeps or he keeps getting all the successful contracts and the others not. Maybe we didn't define the segment well. So I would dig in, try to understand what really works there and how are we going to scale it up for the rest of the team. And then it's again is going to help us redefine the ICP for us.
Now, this is a tactical question, but I think one of the things that is helpful for this podcast, for the podcast listeners, is really understanding the how. It's one thing to say, hey, you should do this, but how do you execute it? So, what you just mentioned, how do you have that dialogue? Have you structured kind of weekly meetings where, this meeting is not about deal reviews and forecasts? This meeting is about, hey, what have we learned? How have you created that, for lack of better words, full feedback loop, just tactically? And how have you executed that?
Yeah, I think you are a small team in early stage company. So you get together after every meeting, you just evaluate what's going on, what did go well, what didn't go well, how did you feel? It is more about the feelings because people don't say no in the meetings, even though they are not going to buy. And a salesperson would know it, even though there is no transcript. You cannot get that kind of information by reading the transcript of the meeting. But the salesperson, whoever has been in the meeting room, knows it. They do understand this. So you try to unfold this information, that feeling, and make it into something much more tangible, create a pattern. So it is not like micromanaging. Oh, let me understand what happened in your meeting. This is not like I'm trying to step in your territory. I'm just curious. Let's brainstorm about it. What did you talk? Which features did you talk about? What did they say? How did you feel about it? What would you do next? And if you can see some sort of pattern there in terms of, oh, our products, this feature is really on demand, or this segment is giving that kind of signals, we can identify that kind of pattern. We can go and now we just converted unknown, some sort of known unknown. And then we can go and search for this unknown thing in other situations. And if we can tackle this, if we can find any other similarities with that pattern, we can expand that market from there. It is because all you need is just one very happy customer. I always prefer one happy customer rather than 100 okay customers, right? And one single customer is going to give you some clues about what your product should be, what
Mhm.
problems you're going to solve. And from there, you are going to grow in the market. So it is the same thing for the team management, team building, or creating the sales channel. What did go well? Let's replicate it. Can we imitate it? Because running a business is different than winning a lottery. You can win a lottery and you can get rich, but would you count yourself as a good decision maker, good decision person? It's just one time thing. And when it comes to business, it's the repeatable success. If you can set up the machine, set up the factory, whatever you are doing, if you can imitate the same process over and over again, then we can talk about the scalability. It is the same for the sales or marketing or product development or engineering or test engineering, whatever you name it, all the functionalities, it is about scalability. And scalability is knowing what parameters you are working on and keeping everything fixed and playing with one parameter at a time. Try to understand, are you going to increase or decrease it? Try to find the sweet spot there. And then, oh, I feel good. This soup is not hot. This soup is not cold. I can drink this one. three-verse story. So, and every time you go and check the function, the sales team, the segment, the product, and you keep the parameter, everything else fixed and play with one of them. And then when you find a sweet spot, you try to scale it. And when it is not scalable anymore and stop growing, then it is time to play with that parameter again.
Yeah.
And you just repeat it.
Yeah. I think that's really that foundation is being able to limit to that one variable. I wonder how you feel about this. One of the things I think about as you're bringing on 2, 3, 4, 5 salespeople is you got to be able to, those corporate pitch deck, as much as salespeople sometimes kind of want to go off script is, hey, this is kind of the key things. These are the reason why we want to say these messages. I
Mhm.
want, so you don't have to read the script exactly, but I want you to be consistent about how we're rolling it out because we've got to run this play, if you will, a dozen times so we can get some feedback. If it's not working, then let's go into that and let's talk about that rather than everybody's doing something different, which to me goes into one of the things that I believe about is enablement. And I don't mean big long training sessions, but if you're going to scale a
Yeah.
team, you need to give them some sort of foundation as, hey, this is how we want to run our meetings. This is what we want to say. This is how we want to run our demos to make sure there's consistency, or else to your point, there's 10 variables that you could point to, or maybe it's a personal variable, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you have multiple salespeople, because if everybody's doing something different, you don't know if it's because that person has a different playbook.
Yeah. I think I'm very deliberate about it because it must be coming from my academy teaching career. I never pass a deck. Hey, this is the sales deck and go and sell it. And here's what we do. And this is the market we are addressing. We never done it in all of our companies. I usually explain this is the market, but just like I said, right? Like founder mentality. And I try to not hire any product manager because I expect everyone in the company to be the product manager. If you're a salesperson, it doesn't matter. You have to understand design thinking, innovation, flexibility, understand the 5 why framework. What is going on? Why is it going on? I usually ask, here is the market. We think it is the correct thing when I engage with a salesperson for the first time. And this is the product I think we should be building. Would you like to go and do a research? And when we onboard a salesperson, I usually start with the competitive analysis task. I'm not giving you anything. This is the market we claim to be. Would you like to go and run your own market research? And when they come back in 2, 3 days, I always learn something about because everybody comes with a different background. Some are engineers, some are lawyers, some are psychologists, and they always have different perspectives. So I'm looking for this competitive analysis, different perspectives. And after spending some time, okay, they feel comfortable. This is our roadmap. We agree because they already contributed this product roadmap. They already contributed refining the ICP. And I asked them, could you please prepare your sales deck? And it is always different for the rest of the team.
You prefer that each person has a different deck. Is that what I heard you
Yeah.
say? Okay, so then kind of push back
Yeah.
and say, if everybody has a different deck, how do you know what's working with the star performer? Was it the deck? Was it the messaging, or was it the product? So how do
Yes.
you narrow down your kind of one parameter that you're playing with?
It is so hard to sell something you don't believe in. And it is so easy to sell something you really feel it, you understand the problem, and you really believe in the solution. And it is not like following a deck. I've been in millions of sales meetings. I listened as a customer, and I've seen people, some professors also do that. Just open the slides, read. And
Right.
when oh, okay, I know the question. I'm going to answer this, but actually it doesn't add any value to the customer. But you empower the salesperson with their own presentation. It is not the sales meeting. It is a presentation. They are talking about something that they're passionate about. They're talking about something they already believe in. So they don't actually need the deck. They don't follow the deck. They talk out of knowledge and they use the deck as just supporting material. They can leave it with the customer after they leave the venue. The customer can go and remember what happened in the meeting. So how do we keep all these parameters fixed with everybody while everybody has different sales deck, right? Of course, we have a sales deck. Everybody comes and contributes. We put it on our website. And when a customer like inbound marketing as a result of inbound marketing, they see the exact same thing. It is our best version. But your best deck isn't necessarily the best deck of a specific salesperson can use in their sales pitch. They allow them to use their own material because they prepared it. They don't have to memorize anything because they already. And after every sales meeting, I don't know if you know about like encoding in software engineering, there's a pair fast coding. Two engineers is tasked in one single work, and then they do it very fast. And this is the learning process. So at least one another salesperson just interviews the salesperson come from a sales meeting. They elaborate on what happened. What did they say? Is it aligned with our company's vision, mission, our value proposition, our differentiation, or with our future roadmap? Maybe sometimes you just don't know what's going to happen 2 months later, or you might feel like, oh, I'm going to commit something that we are not going to do. These are a little bit dangerous places. So it is very important to understand what the company is dealing with in terms of the value, in terms of the mission of the company. And it is very important to understand why we are doing what we are doing instead of how are we doing it. Because if you can understand why we are doing it, then when a different question comes, you will be able to answer that with an accuracy. So as a post sales meeting discussions help us to improve our sales strategy, pricing strategy, our roadmap, our ICP. So this is one whole story, right? This is the sales driven growth. Try that. This is an experimentation as well. And at the same time, it is very hard to do in B2B setting. We also try PLG, product led growth. It is really hard when it comes to B2B setting. Just it is not because execution of it is hard. It's not because it's much more complex when it comes to functionalities, but every customer has different sales cycle, different procurement strategy, or different workflows. It is hard to throw something out there and let it happen by itself. So I think we are discovering something. It is not a novel, of course, sales assisted product led growth, but how much assisted by sales is very important. So salespeople are going to come and impact the roadmap at 30%, or is it going to be 90%? It is maybe product assisted sales led growth is going to be. You can name it as you wish. But I think the core thing is more than being able to close a deal, understanding the company value and understanding why company exists, what kind of problem they are trying to solve is the core values we are trying to give the salespeople rather than just the sales stack.
Yeah, and we didn't talk about this overtly during this podcast, but obviously you lead companies from a sense of empowerment, of trust, of curiosity. So, the whole other episode in itself is how do you build the right culture to where you're able to have, to your point, 50 co-founders, if you will, on the team, because that's an art in and of itself. As the captain of the ship, as the spokesperson of the company, you really drive a lot of the culture of the company. And so you
That's
have
right.
to be able to toe the line to make sure people feel empowered to be able to drive that contribution. So, gosh, I kind of had a hunch this is going to be a full episode. So let me try to kind of take my recaps of the nuggets that you shared when I just shared one of them of you being able to make sure that you hire people when you get to that stage. So number one, CEO is just everything at the beginning of the company. So really being able to dig in and make sure that you're on the ground, finding out the market intelligence, really talking to those who could be prospects of the company as you're able to scale. The note that I took was making sure that you have people that have a founder mentality who are able to contribute to your roadmap, to your brainstorming of the market and really understand at the end of the day, what I've heard is you're holding everybody accountable to really understand the product and the market. So it's not just, hey, I'm the salesperson, I'm just booking the meeting and I got to turn it over to this sales engineer. I really have to understand whatever, as well as be able to keep the full feedback loop of expecting that there's going to be pivots and maybe changes on a regular basis and being okay to adopt while listening to your team in terms of what their opinions are along the way in the process. And then I also, noted at the end of the day, there might be some differences depending upon the nature of your business, B2B, B2C, on how you're going to go about specifically those stages. But it seems like your experience, those tenets really, really hold true. What is the one resonating piece of advice that we haven't talked about on this call that you would suggest?
I think it's going to encapsulate everything. MVP is great. Try to focus on MVP, but MVP is dead. So let's
Oh,
try to talk. Let's start to talk about RAT. The entrepreneurship is all about the validation, testing what is going to work, what is not, and try to understand what is the riskiest assumption you are making. And once you run through this riskiest assumption test, you are going to find whether or not this product is going to work or that market is going to serve well. And you say, no, okay, what is the next assumption? So the shift is going to happen from MVP to RAT, and it has to happen. You will see all the entrepreneurs applying RAT over MVP is going to be surviving near future.
yeah. And for the listeners, RAT meaning riskiest assumption testing. So, i.e., what is the one or two or three maybe assumptions that if those don't hold true, your whole product is not going to hold, right? Period, full stop, right? If Zappos, the famous story in the Google Lean Innovation, Lean Ventures book is, for Zappos, for the founder, the one thing he tested before even building a website was actually physically going to somebody's door with an order sheet, shoes unseen, and saying, hey, will you place an order? And if that wasn't true, if a consumer wasn't able to have the confidence to buy a pair of shoes without trying them on, whole business model wasn't going to work, right? So to me, those are the biggest, the key assumptions. So that's a great piece of advice. Thank you for spending the time with me. I'm going to do something here. I know we're running out of time. I'm going to do something I do with all of my people. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, rapid fire. First response is I want the listeners to get to know you as a person, not just you as a startup founder, and just your first response back. So here we go. So what is your number one pet peeve?
I think those email inboxes with 15,000 unread emails, they
Ah,
drive me.
you're
They,
one of
e-
those.
Inbox is my to-do list. Yeah.
Oh man, you're one of those. I work with you one of those. Unfortunately, I'm not that. So it's a good thing you were remote. You haven't seen my inbox because I don't subscribe to that. I have a different. So yes, if you saw the number that pops up here on the bottom, you would be that. All right. Who, in your opinion, is the most interesting person in the world in the history of the world, and why? And what you might define as interesting.
I, I really, I wish I met Carl Sagan. He's questioning the status quo, like curiosity. It was just another level. He was really a pioneer in that.
Yeah. What would you say is we talked about riskiest assumptions. So I'll key off of that and say, what do you think is the most risky thing that you've done outside of work?
The riskiest thing, I think it was my first solo flight. So, but now I'm able to do that. But now thinking for the first time, it was just out of ignorance. But I'm glad I did it.
So now you fly planes. So that's one of your pastimes. It sounds like so you're a
That's
pilot, but
right.
your first risky flight. So you're saying it was risky because you didn't feel like you were trained enough
That's
to
right.
do it on your own?
Yeah. I didn't know everything I should have known, but maybe I got lucky.
That's so funny. That reminded me of similar experiences that before I got certified to scuba dive, I did that when I was younger a few times. I had never been even trained and I was on the boat and they said, hey, just jump in and go. I said, okay.
Yeah.
And later I took the class. I was like, oh my gosh, I
Yeah,
am.
I can go up to 30,000 feet, but no, I cannot dive 10 feet. No, there is no way.
All right. Well, it was such a fun time today. So, listeners, thank you for joining us today on yet another very packed episode. So, you might have to go through this a couple of times because I know there's a whole list of notes that you could be taking from this. Thank you for joining us today. I really hope today's discussion provided you with not only insights, but actionable, executable insights that you can apply to your own go to market strategy and hopefully get to your growth goals. no matter where you are in your state of business. So just kind reminder, if you like today's episode, hit the subscribe button, leave us a review. And I'm sure I'm going to volunteer at Kursat to say, if you have questions or comments, if you want to share your own stories that you thought about as you're listening to this episode, absolutely share them. The more the merrier. We're all here to learn from each other. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn so that you can be kept up to date on future episodes and the resources that I'll be posting out as follow-ups. And together, I'm hoping this podcast helps us all navigate the complexities of the market, the complexities of starting, growing, expanding, scaling a company, and helping us to unlock our potential and to hopefully get to whatever your goals are, whatever you define them as, get to your growth goals faster. So thank you for listening today. And thank you for joining us in your comments, and I appreciate your time today, Kursat. See you guys in the next
Thank you.
episode. Thank you, listeners. Bye-bye.